All right, guys, so one of the lessons when I was your age that I was never taught to about was what to do when I felt angry. And I was angry a lot when I was young. I actually have a broken hand because of it when I was younger. It's not a good idea to punch a concrete wall when you're angry. Bad things happen inside your hand, right? So I was never taught really what to do with my anger. And so I want to talk to you guys a little bit about anger, what to do about it, how to handle it, that sort of thing. Because both guys and girls do get angry. But for the most part, guys express their anger in what way? Physical or verbal? Physical. Girls, for the most part, they express their anger which way? Verbal or physical? Verbal. It can be both. It can be both. But typically guys want to express anger physically. What I used to do with my son is 19 now, and he kind of, I guess, a bit had my temper, I guess. And so there was times when he'd be really, ramped up and angry and that sort of thing. So one of the things that we would do is we had a wood pile outside, and with an axe that always was out there. And yeah, we used the wood like for bonfires and for campfires and stuff, but it was more for coping. It was more for just a way to release some aggressions, to release some anger, that sort of thing. So I would use it myself, and sometimes I'd be like, all right, son, sounds like you need to go chop some wood for a little bit. Oh, you go out there and you just be chopping wood, as hard and as aggressive as you could and whatever. But it was a good way to cope, good way for him to kind of get out some aggression, that sort of thing. So guys, for the most part, they do express their anger through physical means. Now, sometimes that can be okay, that can be all right. Sometimes it can be very bad too, right? I know you guys know that there's some examples of that. The first thing I want you guys to realize, and I want you guys to know, is that like any emotion, whether it's sadness or happiness or whatever, anger in and of itself is neutral. Anger in and of itself is not a bad thing. Yes, sir?
Isn't anger like a secondary emotion?
It is.
Like it can be a symptom?
It can be, and we're going to get to that actually.
Wait,
Yeah.
what do you mean
Yeah.
symptom?
We'll get to it, I promise. Yeah.
Promise?
Oh, I promise, sir. I promise.
Oh, so we're doing the anger one. That's...
We're doing the anger one. Yeah, that's right.
Wait, what was the other option, bro? Or are you just going to say that for next time?
I'll save it for next time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Don't tell me later.
I might tell you. So like any emotion, anger in and of itself is neutral. It's kind of like a car or a sword or a baseball bat. The object itself is neutral, but it depends on what you do with it, right? So a baseball bat, for example, is a neutral object unless it's in the hands of someone that's going to do something bad with it, correct? All of a sudden, what you do with it is negative, correct? Am I with you? You guys with me? You guys with me?
Yes,
You seem kind of distracted today. You guys all right?
Excuse me, I just broke my back.
Any emotion is not good or bad. In and of itself is neutral. It's what you do with it. If you're feeling happy, or if you're feeling excitement, or fear, or worry, or anger, the emotion itself inside of you is neutral. So the problem is what we do with it. That can be either good or bad. All of a sudden, when we take action on that emotion, all of a sudden it's not neutral anymore. Give me an example of the emotion of excitement not being neutral, either good or bad. Someone tell me. Jackson?
Wait, what do you mean not being neutral? Like, you don't act on it or something?
No, when you do act on it.
All right, bet.
So give me an example of acting on excitement. Just something you do when you act on excitement.
Like, you hit a home run in softball.
Okay?
You slam the bat down, run around the bases, talk a little bit of smack.
Okay. Okay. So you hit a home run, and then you're like, yeah, and you're cheering, and you toss the bat, and you're going around the bases.
Yeah,
So
but you
that
suck.
reaction,
Yeah.
so that reaction is not neutral, right? Because people are going to see that, and they're like, oh, he's excited, so he's expressing that excitement, right? Okay, very good. What about anger? Someone tell me an example of when anger is not neutral. Someone give me a good example, and someone give me a bad example. I mean, it doesn't have to be specific to your life. I'm not looking for that, but just in general. Tyler, you got something?
No, I just forgot your question.
Okay, you have a question?
No, I forgot your
Oh, you forgot my question. Okay. Someone give me an example of anger being used for, we'll say it this way, bad. Someone tell me. Anything. Thomas.
So like anger being used for bad.
Yeah, just any example.
So like, say if I get angry about losing, right?
About losing?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Right.
And like, I like take it out on the staff or whatever.
Right, like verbally or just,
Verbally,
being
or
whatever. Uh-huh.
physical, like maybe he'll stop me from doing something, try to
Right.
restrain me, and I just start taking my anger out on him.
Got you. Right.
Whatever.
It's going to take it from a level 4 to a level 10 real quick, right? If you allow that anger just to kind of take you over, right? Sure, no, that's a good example. Sure. Can anyone give me an example of anger being used for good? Isaiah?
Like chopping wood.
Okay, I mean, that's a coping mechanism, and you are being
You
productive.
could use the anger to work harder.
Okay, that's kind of where I was headed. So good job, Isaiah. So that's something that I deal with often, actually. I'm never really satisfied with like where I am as far as achievement goes. I'm always pushing and always trying to do better than where I am currently. It's not like I'm going around like an angry person, but I look at like what I'm doing, a project I'm working on, or I'm trying to improve myself or whatever. When I was going through my schooling, when I got my degrees, there were times I was so angry that I wasn't prepared to do what I wanted to do, that anger, because I wasn't prepared yet, pushed me to get educated. Is that a good example? So I was mad that I wasn't ready to do whatever I was gonna do, that I wanted to do, and that made me mad. I mean, I wasn't like punching walls at this time, right? I wasn't like freaking out, but I was inside, I was like dissatisfied. I had this burning dissatisfaction or anger inside of me, so that pushed me to do better. Does that make sense? So that's a good example of anger, for example, pushing you to a better thing. Okay. Well, what causes anger specifically? Isaiah said it's a secondary emotion. Do you guys know what he means by that?
Yes.
What does he mean by that, Jackson?
It's not your like main emotion.
Okay, it's not just the main one, but obviously if anger is a secondary, there has to be a what? A first one, or a firstinary, right? Very good. There has to be a initial emotion that is the origin of anger. What could be some of those origins? Okay, stress would be one. That's a good example. Elijah, you got one? That causes anger? Fear. That is like probably number one. That's probably number one. Stress or frustration, fear, and then the ultimate emotion, the ultimate thing that pushes us through life, sometimes unfortunately. What is that thing that is the great absolute that you could say? I don't mean to be negative on this, but it's just the fact of the matter. Everything you do is to avoid this thing. What is it? What? Not quite death, but something that you have to live with or have moments of.
Regret.
Think of a big, that's part of it, but think of a,
Disappoint.
that's part of it.
Disappointed and regret.
That's all part of it. That's a separate category. It's the big one that everything you do every single day, from getting up to eating to putting on shoes to doing your schoolwork to doing what the house parents tell you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, is to avoid this thing. Starts with a P, ends with ain.
Pain.
Pain. Everything we do in one way or another, and oftentimes it's subconscious. We don't even realize we're doing it. Did you realize you had lunch today because you wanted to avoid the pain of being hungry later? That's really what you were doing. When you went to bed tonight, now I know they tell you when you have to go to bed, but even if no one told you, there's eventually a time where you say, I need to get some sleep because I'm gonna avoid the pain of being dog tired the next day. Pain really is the great motivator if you think about it subconsciously. So anger is a secondary emotion, and we can get specific. We can talk about fear, frustration or stress, and then pain. You ever heard this phrase? Even a good dog will bite when it's in pain.
No.
You ever seen that?
Yes, I've seen it.
Some of you have. I have too.
Yeah.
A good dog. I had this friend, and he had this. It was a beautiful dog. It was a blue heeler, I think. Beautiful dog. He had it for years, and it was the friendliest dog. It was nice. I mean, it liked people. I mean, it was just a nice dog.
He bit you.
Well, then it got hit by a car. It didn't die, but it broke its leg. And so the owner that had this dog from a puppy goes over to it, of course, because he's upset and he sees the dog like on the road and it's kind of limping. And he goes to pick up the dog, and what do you think the dog does?
Bite him.
Right.
Boom! Just bit him.
He gets like that.
Because he was in pain, and when the owner that had him since a puppy picked him up, he hurt that leg even more, right? I mean, he didn't do more damage, but it caused the dog to react to his pain, which caused him to what? To bite. To bite. Would that dog have bit his owner if he had not been in pain?
Of course not.
Of course not.
My dog bites me.
Of course
over
not.
Food.
He what?
My dog bites me over food. It reminds me.
Over food? Oh.
Reminds me of.
All right, so here's what I wanted to know. Here's what would have helped me when I was you guys' age. So that's a little bit of foundation of what pain, some kind of things to kind of get you thinking about pain and anger and that sort of thing. Here's some specific things that you can do to help control your anger. You ready? Number one, probably the biggest one. It's the biggest thing you can do when you're having a rush of anger. That anger goes up. You have that rush of heat.
You got a pen?
Number one, do nothing.
Do you have a pen, sir?
Do nothing. Number one is do nothing. If you're afraid you're going to do something with your hands out of anger, what should you not do with your hands?
Nothing.
Nothing. Put them down. What about your mouth? If you're angry and you're about ready to say something and you're doing nothing, what can you do?
Nothing.
Shut it down. I was talking to my son just the other day. He's 19. He's up in Alaska. And we were talking about our mouths, which is a weird topic to have. But he's a smart kid, and and I'm a counselor, and so we were talking about the importance of what goes in to our mouths, what we eat, and also what comes out, our words.
You can control what you eat.
And if you can control what goes into your mouth, what you eat, and if you can control what comes out of your mouth, your words, everything else will be controlled automatically. It's pretty amazing how that works. If you can control what goes in, that's the internal control of you, and then control what comes out, that's the external.
Where's Logan
You got nothing to worry about.
Where's Logan go?
Number one is do nothing. Your emotions race, stop your body. If your hands are going to do something out of anger, stop your hands. What's a good coping mechanism that someone does here that, like, when you feel a rush of anger, what's a coping mechanism you do to kind of calm yourself down, Tyler?
So at home I have, when I was living with a different aunt, I had this punching bag downstairs in my basement, so every time I was angry,
You like punch on the punching
I
bag?
would just punch on the punching bag.
Right on. Okay. What about something that would kind of fit the do nothing thing? Because you're not really doing nothing. You're doing something internally, Elijah.
Isolate yourself.
Okay, you can get away from the situation, right? That's a good thing to do. Because if you're away from the situation, you're not going to do anything to make that situation worse, right? It's a good example. Isaiah?
Take deep breaths.
Okay, breathing exercises. What are some of those called? Do you remember what some of those breathing exercises are called?
Square breathing.
Square breathing is one of them. Do you remember another one?
Breathing.
What is it?
Triangle.
Triangle breathing, and then there's figure eight, and then there's
It's like 6, 7, 8.
there's one more. I can't remember what it is though.
No, you-
Figure eight, 4x4, 4x4. That's what I was thinking of. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Listening to music, probably.
Okay, listen to music. If you're sitting there listening to music, what are you doing with the rest of your body? Probably. I mean, you might be dancing a little bit, but really probably nothing, right? So number one, the best thing you can do to control your anger is do nothing. If you're a car, put your car in neutral when you're angry. Put it in neutral. You can do that through breathing exercises, isolating yourself. I like that. Look at your hands. Sometimes it may sound crazy, but just look at your hands. If you're looking at your hands and look at the lines in your hands, everyone do that for me real quick. I just want you to practice this. Look at your hands, like really look at them. When's the last time you looked at your hands? Look at the lines.
Today.
Look at your, I believe you, Isaiah. Turn them over, look at the other side. Okay, if you're looking at your hands like that, what are your hands not doing?
Nothing.
Really anything, right? Really anything. And if you're really looking at them, kind of studying them out, you're probably not doing a lot of what either with your mouth? Probably not. You can talk looking at your hands, but that is a good way to kind of take your emotions and bring them down. What is doing nothing actually doing in your brain? Do you guys remember the teeter-totter example?
What's that called? It's distracting you from the
Balancing.
Kind of distracting, kind of balancing. Do you guys remember the whole emotion versus logic? We're going to get into this more next week. But the whole teeter-totter with emotions and logic, do you guys remember this at all? Some of you do, some of you don't. I'll just tell you real quick. It takes 10 seconds. So imagine a teeter-totter, right? You all know what a teeter-totter is, right? Do you remember what those are?
You're talking about it.
Yeah, the straight board with a little triangle and it goes up and down. Okay. So when your emotion goes up, and if logic's on the other side, what does logic
Go
do?
down.
It goes down.
I remember you talking about this.
So when your emotions are high, logic is going down. That's why we make mistakes when we're highly emotional.
I was about to say when we're high.
So when we then take time to rebalance and our emotions come down, what goes up?
Your logic.
Your logic. All it's doing is buying you time so you can think clearly, so you don't make the mistakes that you may have made when you're highly emotional, especially with guys when it comes to anger. Okay? Doing nothing allows you time to think. It allows you to rebalance, bring the emotion down, and bring the logic up. Okay? Part of your logic kicking in will allow you to do something when it comes to consequences. What do you think that is? When you're highly angry, your anger goes up and you're really mad, and then I just gotta think for a minute, like what Elijah said, I'm gonna isolate myself, or Isaiah said, I'm gonna do breathing exercises, or I'm gonna just kind of think for a minute, I'm gonna look at my hands, whatever it is, and it gives you time. What is one of those things that you may think about that you don't want to face?
Regret.
Nope, starts with a C,
Ends with
consequences. Very good. So part of your logic, when it comes back up, when your emotions go down and your logic comes back up, all of a sudden you're able to consider the consequences. And you're like, oh geez, maybe it's not a good idea if I do that. Thomas was talking about, like, when I get angry, I might want to like take it out on staff. Well, obviously, if he takes his anger out on staff, verbally, especially physically, what are you going to face, Thomas?
Life.
Well, right. Well, hopefully not too much of it, but part of that would be what I just said. Starts with a C, ends with consequences. Right. So when your logic goes up, you consider the consequences. You're like, golly, maybe I shouldn't do that thing or say that thing because I'm going to have to face the consequences for myself and those around me. I just want to see a raise of hands. Don't say it out loud. But anyone in here ever done anything out of anger and you acted out on it and you regretted it? I mean, that's me too. That's everybody. You can put your hands down. That's every single person on the planet Earth. It really is what it is. But if we would have taken the time, if I would have taken the time when I was angry and thought, if I punch that brick wall, I'm going to break my hand,
John did that.
I probably wouldn't have done it. There's even, it's so common in men, they've named it what? Do you know what they named it? A boxer's break. That's what they call that.
Oh, yeah.
A boxer's break.
I have one of those.
Okay? And it probably came from anger. So oftentimes, guys come in, and a lot of times it's your pinky, because when you're thinking and you're going to strike, you twist your arm. You ever notice that? You twist your arm because you're thinking about it. But when you're not thinking, how do you hit? Like this.
No, I don't do that.
When you don't think, that's what happens. And oftentimes, it's your pinky that takes the brunt of all that force. And what happens to your knuckle on your pinky then? She gone. All right. We talked about coping mechanisms. We talked about things you can do and you can't do. I want to give you a little illustration that I think might be helpful. So what is this?
A rubber band.
No, it's not a balloon.
It's
No,
your
it's a
heart.
balloon. It's a balloon. But for illustration's sake, this is your anger, okay? So let's say you get up in the morning and maybe you get up late and then staff is giving you a hard time and you might lose a point or something because you got up late, right? So what happens to your anger? Blows up a little bit, right? So then you're going through your morning and you're at school and something happens at school, you forgot to do an assignment, or someone's giving you a hard time, school was not good that morning. Then what happens to your anger? Blows up a little bit more. Then you say you go to lunch and you're at lunch and they don't it's fish day, right? Who you like fish day? Oh, okay.
Not fish fillets.
I just hear complaints. It's not your favorite lunch and you don't like it. Oh geez, now I don't even get a lunch I want. Then what happens to your anger?
You go up.
You go back to school and someone's giving you a hard time. One of the other guys, in the school or whatever is giving you a hard time and they're really making you mad and they're saying things you don't like, and what happens to your anger?
Goes up.
There's a little kid in your house that bees annoying.
And then you go back to the house and maybe you're on, maybe you lost your privileges or something, and they're watching something that you do not want to watch, and you're sitting there and I hate this, I don't want to be here, this really stinks. And what happens to your anger then? And then you go to bed and you're just thinking about your day and you're just like mad, you're like, golly, this is a terrible day. And then one of the kids says one more thing to you. Then what happens to your anger? And then eventually, what happens? If he says one more thing, what's going to happen?
He said that one word.
You just carry.
Bro, don't do that,
You
bro.
just carry thumbtacks in your
Sweet.
pocket. That's dangerous.
Then what's going to happen is your anger, she's done. And you're going to pop, and you're going to lash out, you're going to hit a wall, you're going to freak out, you're going to be really, really angry, right? That's what happens to our anger. But when it comes to coping mechanisms, that's why we talk about coping mechanisms. So here's what happened. That same day, right? You get angry, you get angry, you get angry. So your anger's like this, right? But then you decide to do some square breathing exercises. Let's a little air out. And then you decide, I'm gonna isolate myself. I'm just tired of this. I need to get away. You get permission from staff. Man, can I go on the porch? Can I hang out? Just kind of chill out? And they say, yeah. A little bit of air out. And then you want to maybe do something that like helps you. Maybe like we talked about chopping wood. Maybe it's like go for a walk, or maybe it's play basketball in the gym, or maybe it's something like that. It makes you feel better, right? So what does that do? It lets a little more pressure out.
And you call your parents.
And then maybe you call your parents, or you talk to somebody. Maybe it's staff or your parents, or maybe it's one of the friends here or whatever. And that lets a little bit more air out. Then what happens when that kid at the end of the day says something that really upsets you? Then what happens?
Oh God, don't do it. There's not even a thumbtack in your finger.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Why is it not popping? Because he's putting his fingers
covering
over it.
Let
Bro,
me do
hold
it.
it like
Well,
this.
if I let it pop, it's going to ruin the illustration. Point is, when it's like this, it's much, much harder to pop. Now, you may still have some frustration, but it's not going to blow like it did that one. It's not just going to burst and you're going to get angry and you're going to have to face what, Thomas? You're not going to face consequences. That's right. That's right.
Bro, when you do
I
that,
get balloon.
Man, I turned right to the page. How about that? Do you guys know what your triggers are?
Yes.
Like, you actually know what your triggers are? Maybe kind of?
bro, say, bro,
The great philosopher Socrates, he said something that really stuck with me a long time ago. He said, know thyself. Know thyself. The more you know yourself, the more you can do what?
help yourself.
Help, control. What do they say? What's the best way to defeat an enemy?
Love him.
Kindness.
Well, you can kill it with kindness. But what do you first need to know about that enemy? You need to what?
Know where he
You need to
is.
know them incredibly well. What do armies do before they attack? They what?
Plan.
They study. They plan and they study based on the enemy. They're not just going to say, I'm just going to go into this battle and just like it's every other battle I've ever faced. They're going to study that enemy so that they can be what? Most what?
Ready.
Effective or ready.
Bro,
So who is your greatest enemy in your life?
you.
At times. So you better know yourself.
Who you said your mom?
You better know what your triggers are. You better know what coping mechanisms work for you. Because my coping mechanisms, and I have them, they may not be the ones that work for you. And your coping mechanisms that work for you might not work for me. But I guarantee, every man has coping mechanisms. And if you don't, you're going to get surprised when your anger gets out of control and it shocks you. You need to know what your coping mechanisms are. Know yourself, know your triggers. Questions, comments, concerns?
Nope, I'm ready to get some coffee.
Okay.
Was that all the first one?